decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg. I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours talking about everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. Going to be joined in about 75 minutes time by Nate Schmidt, Winnipeg Jets defenseman. So we're looking forward to that. And at the bottom of the first hour, Ted Wyman, the sports editor from the Winnipeg Sun, is going to join us. Nice to see so many familiar faces, so many new faces joining us live in the chat on this Saturday morning. If you haven't already done so, get it off to a good start. Smash that like button. We know that that's what you want to do. We encourage you to do it. It's a free-for-all here Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave, good to see you. Ezzy, good to see you. I must say that painting that you drew behind you is absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, I had a little bit of spare time, boys, so I thought I would just, put that together for the show. But before we get into the hockey, I mean, it pains me to say this, but it took a Drew to bring the Bombers, into the win column in yesterday's game.
I don't want to take all the credit. But, when they found out late in the game that I was in attendance, they knew they have to step up their game to overcome the hurdle that is the Ottawa Red Blacks.
Yeah, and for anybody who, wasn't watching the game or didn't read about the game, backup quarterback Drew Brown had to come into the game because Zach Galeros was taken out of the game for safety reasons. And he, I think he went 3 for 3, if I'm not mistaken. Drew, you were at the game. And then Mark Leggio kicked the game-winning field goal. It was a little bit close. I mean, you thought the Bombers might kind of dominate the Red Blacks last night, but Jeremiah Masoli, that was a nice little pickup for them. He's a really good quarterback. So, 1917, low scoring. It was maybe a little bit tighter than Bombers fans would like. But, yeah, it was a Drew that led the Bombers to victory.
Exactly right. The Bombers did not deserve that victory. They were outplayed by Ottawa throughout the entirety, the vast majority of the 60 minutes. But, the Bombers are a little bit like the Tampa Bay Lightning right now in that they just find a way to win. Even when they're not clicking at all cylinders, when things aren't going perfectly well, they know how to win. And it's ironic because, a decade ago, Ezzy, when you and I, had season tickets together, and boy, was that an experience and a half, let me tell you, folks. The Bombers would
great. I would get season tickets again if you want to.
I know you would, and we'll go to a game together this year, and we'll make sure we call Dave and say you're not invited. But we'll do something like that.
Dave M always has an invite, Drew.
We'll get to it. We'll get to some games together. But the Bombers certainly, they just sort of hung around. Ottawa let them hang around. The Red Blacks were the better of the two teams, undoubtedly, but the Bombers were able to, in the last minute, overcome it and pick up a hard-fought victory at home in front of 26,002 very happy and somewhat intoxicated fans. It was a beautiful night.
Not Dave you, though, Drew. You weren't drinking, right? You were just having water.
No. I have never had alcohol. I've never had a drink before in my life, and
except for Seagram's.
Except for our friends at Seagram's, but I don't get their non-alcoholic options. And I defy anybody to prove me different, right? Yeah, let's not even touch that one. Dave, good to see you, buddy. How are things? That's quite the resplendent orange shirt you're wearing. It actually matches the flower behind Ezzy, so I thought that was good color coordination on your guys' part.
It's true. I was originally wearing a white shirt, and then I saw Ezzy's background. I said, you know what? I got to go orange. It'll match. It'll match what Ezzy's.
Is that orange or red? It looks red to me.
This is actually red. It shows up as orange on the screen, but it's actually a red shirt.
Well, I see that Winnipeg.
One of us is obviously colorblind, boys.
Winnipeg Chaster in the chat, you should have said I was completely sober, and you should have said hello if you saw me on the bus. I would have been glad to chat you up. I was talking to my father, and as entertaining as my dad is for 3+ hours, I'm sure I could have used interaction with somebody else at a different point in time. In that case, let's get started with the Winnipeg Jets, of course, and it continues to be Trotz watch, but then a new name coming into the fold this week, a name that's a little bit out of left field, a name that's got a what I'm going to put a little bit of an asterisk next to it, because there's some baggage, not disqualifying baggage, but there is certainly part of the conversation there that will need to be that needs to be addressed, and that's Jim Montgomery, former head coach of the Dallas Stars, was most recently an assistant coach with the St. Louis Blues, but apparently, and I think this went lost by so many people, also with ties, brief ties, but ties nonetheless, to the Manitoba Moose 1.0 way back in the day. He was a member of the Manitoba Moose before he went on to his coaching career. And apparently he's a name to watch if Barry Trotz does not end up here in Winnipeg. So I'll ask you guys, what was your thoughts when you heard that Jim Montgomery might be towards the top of the, I'm going to say, the alternative list for True North? That might be a little bit, that might be unfair when I call it the alternative list, in any event.
Well, first of all, I'll start off, Dave. I'm surprised you didn't start off with Bruce Cassidy. I mean, we'll get into Cassidy, but I was more surprised that the Bruins let him go, considering that it's been 3 weeks since they were eliminated from the first round, and he's had that team in the playoffs the last 6 years, right, Drew? But yeah, we'll wait maybe a few minutes to get into Cassidy. But you mentioned, I mean, Jim Montgomery. I mean, most hockey fans, hockey observers know the story. He was battling some personal demons, and that's why he left. The Dallas Stars organization. Rick Bowness took over, and then we all know what happened. The Dallas Stars went to the Stanley Cup final and lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning back in 2020, right? So, I mean, it's a little bit surprising because, we'd really been focused on Barry Trotz, Alain Vigneault, Scott Arniel, Pascal Vincent. But we think about it, guys, like Jim Montgomery's resume is, just as good, as most coaches in the NHL. Definitely not Barry Trotz. But, this is a guy that, he's obviously dealt, with his off bench or off ice problems, whatever you want to call it, right? Like he got help, and he's better now, right? So to me, it takes a lot of courage. I mean, we've seen it with, Carey Price and many others, whether it's, dealing with mental health issues or dealing with alcoholism or drugs or anything like that, right? So I think, Jim Montgomery needs to be commended for acknowledging that, he had a problem with alcohol. I think it was just alcohol. And he dealt with it, and, he is now, back in the NHL. Right. And I don't know if we know if he's under contract for one more year, with St. Louis, but I think St. Louis would allow him to talk to the Jets.
Yeah, no question. Nothing that would preclude him from taking a head coaching opportunity. Nobody's going to stand in the way of an assistant coach doing that. To me, Dave, it was an intriguing name. He has a track record of success with the Dallas Stars. He did a pretty good job there as their head coach. As you mentioned it, that he did have to leave the Stars because he was battling some substance abuse issues, and he seems to have those in check. And we, as you mentioned, I echo your comments. All the praise to him for taking on that battle, because that's the biggest battle you'll ever face in your life, is something like that. That pales in comparison to a Wednesday night against the Nashville Predators or anything like that. Don't want to make light of that by any means. To me, it's an intriguing idea if Barry Trotz doesn't end up coming to fruition, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think, look, there's a lot of things, as he touched on it. The Bruce Cassidy definitely throws a bit of a wrench in that situation, because not necessarily for the Winnipeg Jets, because I don't think that would be someone that the Jets would be in on, but it does take away a Dallas and Vegas for Barry Trotz. Now, that still leaves one if he wants to choose the other, but his name kind of takes that away. Now, Jim Montgomery, 2 championships in the USHL. He had a great career. University of Denver won them an NCAA championship. And like you just said, Drew, great first season. 43 wins in his first season in Dallas, and 17 out of 31 games, I think, and a few OTLs there as well in his second season with Dallas, before obviously being let go and then having to restart his career with the St. Louis Blues. The big thing with him is, it seems to be, and this is what we've been hearing from Friedman and Jeff Merrick, who've been talking about it like on the 32 Thoughts podcast, which obviously we featured on illegalcurve.com, expertly transcribed by yours truly. But I think it's one of those situations where, these are guys, he's a familiar name. I mean, Elliot said that he's got a lot of familiarity with Craig Heisinger and Jimmy Roy and guys like that who are in
the Central Division, right? Like, I wonder how much stock Chevy,
the Central Division,
right? How much stock does Chevy put in that, Dave? Right? Sorry, I'll let you get back in here, but like, Dallas, St. Louis, like you wonder. I mean, I'm not saying that's the reason why the Jets would hire him as the head coach, boys, but you wonder, a guy that's been in the Central Division for 4 or 5 years now. You wonder if Chevy puts a premium on that.
Well, and
I
as he just, I'll just finish off, Drew. And then I mean, like I said, I think the big thing for him is, he's not afraid of playing younger players. And I think that's, obviously he has that experience in college for what I think 4 years at Denver. But the reality is that he did that in Dallas, right? And from what we've been hearing in what he's been able to do in St. Louis, they have a good infrastructure in place for him, a support system for him in St. Louis. That's what what I've been reading. So Winnipeg could put something like that in place, and I'm sure that they'd be able to. I think it's a no-brainer in the sense that we don't know what Barry Trotz is thinking, right? Barry Trotz clearly said he's not rushing. And I don't think the Jets are in a rush. Like, I know they, like most teams, they probably would like to have this done sooner rather than later and ahead of the draft. But as we talked about, the Jets is the only reason you don't need a coach for the draft. That's just like whatever. That's just chatter. The reality is you just want to have someone because you need someone to steady the ship with all the uncertainty with the Jets, with Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, all of the roster, all that certain uncertainty. That's the only reason why you want a coach in place sooner rather than later. But I think that, what Elliot Friedman seemed to suggest was that the Jets are planning contingencies now because they've been so focused, so have the blinders on for Barry Trotz, as has every other person he's either from Manitoba or, lives in Manitoba or from Manitoba or is a Jets fan elsewhere. But everybody has had Trotz blinders on, which isn't a bad thing because he is the big fish. And again, like I said, my feeling is Bruce Cassidy will take one of those other, Vegas, Dallas markets off and give Barry Trotz maybe one. If they jump they go for him quickly because he's seen as a good coach, that could just limit Barry Trotz. He might say, oh, well, maybe I'm going to sit around and maybe I'll sit the year off. It sounds to me like that doesn't make a lot of sense in the sense that if I'm Barry Trotz and I want to move into management, I think I'd want to continue coaching the next couple of years and then move into management, not take a year off. So I think he has to wait for the right opportunity. And the Jets are just planning contingencies in case he A, does that, or B, they decide, look, we need to have our locker room and all of our situation in order ahead of the draft or a week ahead of the draft, whatever their deadline is for it. Maybe they've set one internally, of course, that they'll have to have something. And if they do, Jim Montgomery isn't, to me, a bad second option.
Can I just jump in here? I'm not sure why, Dave, you exclude Bruce Cassidy there, because Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period said the Jets might be interested in or have an interview set up with him. Like, if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, why aren't you approaching Bruce Cassidy? That would be my question, unless he's not interested, right? Like, I'm not saying that, he wouldn't be a good fit in Vegas or Philly. Apparently, Pete DeBoer, they're really interested in him in Dallas as well, right? So if Dallas is leaning towards DeBoer because they know they can't get Trotz, why aren't you interviewing Bruce Cassidy? Like, Michael Tracos had an article in Post Media saying that one of the reasons why Boston let him go is because he's doing too much winning, which is a crazy idea, right? But Boston, they're not going to have Brad Marchand until November. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with David Pasternak. Apparently, he's really not happy with Don Sweeney. There's a lot of question marks. Yeah. Right, Patrice Bergeron's a UFA. But going back to what you said, like, again, I don't always want to pick on Elliott here because, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Elliott, but, like, of course, isn't it obvious the Jets are going to have contingency plans if they don't get Barry Trotz? Like, to me, that's not really telling me anything new. Like, we know right now at this point, I would just like to know who the Jets head coach is going to be, because it seems like every 3 or 4 days there's a potential head coach for the Jets. Well, let me tell you something, guys. The Jets are only going to hire one head coach, and if it's not Barry Trotz, I don't care what anybody says. Nobody really knows who Kevin Cheveldayoff. He may not even have a favorite after Barry Trotz. Right now, to me, it's still very wide open.
Well, what I like about the Montgomery name is a couple of things. One, his familiarity with the Central Division. I think that would be a huge plus for a head coach, in that, he was in Dallas, he was in the Dallas organization, so he knows the Stars, and admittedly it was a few years ago, but he should still have some pretty good familiarity with that team. He's been with the Blues for the last couple of years as an assistant head coach, so he certainly knows what there is to know about the St. Louis Blues. And he's not, although he obviously has ties to True North, he's not what I'm going to call a True North boy, in that like in the realm.
What does that mean, Drew?
in the realm of Vigneault, or in the realm of Arniel, or in the realm of Carlisle, when there was talk about Carlisle.
Those are true North men, not boys.
You know what I mean. I don't mean it in a pejorative way. I mean just with the obvious ties to.
Okay, well, I don't even know what pejorative means, so you're gonna have to define that.
I don't mean it in a negative sense, or I'm not intending to mean it in a bad sense of the word. But I like that he's a little bit out of what immediately came to mind for the Winnipeg Jets' next head coach.
Yep.
Now, I don't think, despite what David Pagnotta reported in the fourth period, and I'm sure that there's truth to what he said, I just don't see Bruce Cassidy necessarily being a match for the Winnipeg Jets. I see him, if he decides to coach this year, possibly staying in the Eastern Conference. I could see him as a match for the Philadelphia Flyers, potentially. Sort of see him staying in the East. The Florida Panthers, maybe, depending on what happens with Andrew Brunette behind the bench there. For whatever reason, I just don't see him.
What about Detroit?
Detroit, certainly. There you go. I just don't see him being a fit for the Jets necessarily. It wouldn't surprise me if the Jets talk to him, but I don't think that he's necessarily going to be. I don't think he's going to be the second choice behind Barry Trotz.
Well, we'll see.
I could see him.
You could be right, but also we don't know. That's the thing. And all due respect to Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merritt, I'm not knocking those guys right now. I'm just saying nothing that they've really come out with has surprised me. And ask Dave, like I said this before the Jets named Dave Lowry the interim coach. I said Alain Vigneault, right? And then 4 or 5 months later, it's like Elliot Friedman mentions Alain Vigneault as a possible Jets head coach. Like I'm just saying, like a lot of these names, I agree with you, Drew. Jim Montgomery, I think, came a little bit out of left field because of the fact that, he was out of hockey briefly and he was an assistant coach with St. Louis, and he wasn't as big of a name necessarily as a Barry Trotz or maybe even an Alain Vigneault, right? I'm just saying right now, I think all we're being told is this guy could be a potential head coach. Well, this guy could be a potential head coach. Well, I mean, your average fan could come up with 10 potential head coaches for the Jets. I'm not denigrating any at all the reporting that's being done right now, but I think your guess is as good as mine, guys, in terms of who is clear. Like let's be honest, Barry Trotz is clearly number one. The Jets want Barry Trotz to be their next head coach. All I'm saying is after that, at least based on everything that I've read and heard people I've talked to, I don't think there is a clear-cut kind of second, number two, that the Jets are favoring after Barry Trotz. I think there's a bunch. Like, why can't Pascal Vincent be right up there?
Well, you haven't heard his name really bandied about much, aside from people sort of making some connecting points there, Dave, in that he was obviously well-regarded throughout the league. He was with the Jets organization. He was with the Moose as their head coach, but you really haven't heard his name come to the forefront, I would say, of candidates if it isn't Barry Trotz. I agree with Ezzy that Barry Trotz is the leader in the clubhouse. He's the guy that the Jets clearly want more than anyone else right now, but if it doesn't come to fruition, or if his time frame and the Jets time frame don't add up, to me, Jim Montgomery is somebody that I would say, okay, I can accept that as your new head coach. I can accept that as your new option more than Alain Vigneault, more than Scott Arniel, who's probably coming in more as an associate head coach or an assistant head coach. Mm-hmm. Jim Montgomery to me is an intriguing name that could move sort of right to the top of that second tier of candidates, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, look, when he was in the University of Denver and helped them to the NCAA championship, he was very well regarded. And there was a lot of, excitement in Dallas when he was hired, and he had a very good first year as a head coach. So I remember when people lamented, for example, Scott Arniel, and they said, oh, well, his time in Columbus was terrible. He's not going to be a good head coach. Now, I personally feel guys can grow. You have to learn from your failures and use them to, change your future. But I think that Jim Montgomery is in a coach that we're talking about got fired because what his team was doing wasn't good. It was all his off ice, right? Everything that was taking place off ice. So the reality is you're not talking about a guy, and again, you're talking about a guy who's able to integrate younger players into the lineup, and that's something the Jets have had and that's not necessarily a Barry Trotz hallmark, is integrating some young players into the lineup. So that might be a benefit for a guy like Jim Montgomery, who's able to bring those young guys into the lineup, because that's something that's Jets are a draft and develop team. Last time I checked, most teams are still, but some teams like Tampa seem to trade away all their draft picks and still able to maintain their
No, Tampa Bay is a win Stanley Cups team.
Yes, that's true. So what it comes down to, though, is that you have to have a guy who's willing to integrate those younger players who are going to come up from the Moose, the Morgan Barons, the David Gustafsons, give them bigger roles on the Jets, not play Blake Wheeler 23 minutes in a game. Like, this is what you need. You need a coach who's going to be able to do that. And to me, and again, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some sort of Jim Montgomery expert other than what we saw of him when he was in Dallas. Because as I've said before, nobody has any clue. And if they do, they're lying unless they actually follow that team, what an assistant coach is doing in St. Louis or in, when we talked about Tampa Bay or Detroit, any of these assistant coaches, generally you don't have any clue. You don't even know what their roles are generally, with the team. So I'm not going to pretend like I'm some sort of expert on what Jim Montgomery's been able to do with St. Louis, but they have been a pretty good squad in the last couple of years, right? Even with injuries, even with the COVID situation, St. Louis managed to do some things. So to me, I think he is a very good coach. It seems like, again, he's got the 1 year and a half, or maybe a little bit more than a little under a half of time with the Dallas Stars. And like I said, it seems like he would be a good match for a team like Winnipeg, who isn't prepared. I mean, everything we've heard, the Jets are not. I know I think Trini was saying that, the Jets are retooling, rebuilding. They're not going to. And they still think they can win with this group. And so that's what this all seems to be lending itself towards, right? Or leaning towards. So if it's leaning towards a team that's going to continue to win, well, Jim Montgomery seems to be a head coach who's won. And if he's got everything in check and he's ready to go, then to me, he is a guy. And I agree with Ezzy. You don't not take a look at Bruce Cassidy, because all he's done is win as well. 6 years of being in the playoffs, Stanley Cup final appearance. Like, he's done a lot. I just don't know that he's necessarily the fit with Winnipeg. I think he's from Ottawa, though, so maybe you never know. But I mean, I would just see that this Montgomery hire, especially with familiarity, to your point, Drew, not a ton of it. Obviously, there's a 1 year of time in Winnipeg. But that's one of the things Friedman talked about on his 32 Thoughts podcast. Just the idea of being familiar with the environment, prepared to deal with the fishbowl that is Winnipeg. And I mean, it is what it is.
That part, sorry, Dave, that part I didn't fully understand, how they were making it out to be that Winnipeg is such a unicorn of a market or anything. It's so passionate, and they, people need to be prepared for what they're coming into. I'm like, it's a Canadian hockey market. I mean, I don't think it's any different than most other passionate hockey markets that you need and the weather's not going to be warm in the winter. I mean,
just
that's
quickly,
the breaking news there.
Drew, just quickly, it was funny because then I saw like someone in, I guess wherever the Hockey Night guys were, whether it's Toronto or Edmonton. Yeah. They were out, I was in Toronto, and then like people were like, oh, look, they were taking pictures. Like, oh, so I guess it happens in Toronto. Like, of course, fans are fans. If you're in Canada, that's one of the things you're going to have to accept. You get the adulation, you get the anger, you get it all, and there's a lot of passion, and that's not a bad thing. I mean,
hockey is hockey, guys. I'm sorry, that's BS. Like, last time I checked, it goes down to -20 in Toronto, and I'm pretty sure it goes down to -30 in Edmonton, and they won 4 Stanley Cups. Yeah. Like, you could say that, look, every city is unique. Like, you can't say that there's any two cities that are exactly the same. There's similarities, right? Like, for some of the teams down south, but I just think that's overblown entirely. Like, what happened to 2 or 3 years ago? Everybody wanted to be a member of the Jets because they wanted that run to the West Final, right? That was one of the reasons Paul Stastny wanted to come here, for example, right? In addition to his friendship with Blake Wheeler, right? So I don't necessarily know. Yeah. I think that there's a good chance that someone will be brought in as the head coach that doesn't have direct ties to True North. But we might see Scott Arniel, for example, who does have deep ties to True North, come in as the associate coach. But I didn't really get that either. Like, I think we're almost overcomplicating this, guys. Someone's going to be hired, and I agree with Roni, one of our longtime IC fans. Like, this is an excellent UFA class, right? Trotz, Bruce Cassidy, like Alain Vigneault, Jim Montgomery, if you want to call him a UFA. Like, there's a bunch of good coaches. The Jets are going to get a really good head coach, even if it's not Trotz.
And that's the question, though. I mean, that's sort of circling back to where we began, is how much longer do the Jets and all the other teams that are looking for a head coach and that are waiting on Barry Trotz, how much longer do they wait for? Dave, you said that, they don't need a head coach in place by the draft. And I would agree with that. The head coach doesn't do anything at the draft. They're wallpaper on a photo. But, for a Jets team that had a lot of upheaval in the dressing room at the end of last year, and probably has had for the last number of years. A new head coach needs to come in and, begin to, smooth the waters or talk to players and really sort of understand the situation that they're in store for. And they have to, training camp is 3 months away, and you got to start preparing for training camp. I mean, they announced earlier this week that the prospects tournament is back in Penticton. The Young Stars tournament is September 18th. That's 3 months and a week away. Coaches need to start to prepare for these things, and they need to start sort of talking to the players they know are going to be on the team this coming season. And you probably want to start those conversations sooner rather than later. So if you're the Jets, and if you're Vegas, and if you're Dallas, and if you're everybody that's without a head coach, you probably want to start to get your ducks in a row in the next week, maybe 2 weeks, something like that, pretty quickly. Let's head to break. When we come back, Ted Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun going to join us for more Jets talk. It's a Saturday morning. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of hour number one. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and we're pleased to welcome the sports editor of the Winnipeg Sun and of Post Media, our good friend Ted Wyman joins us on the show. Now, Teddy, good to see you. First of all, is there any truth to the rumor that Winston Rose was trying to cover you to prevent you from joining the show and you were able to beat him off the line for a long reception like so many Red Blacks last night?
Oh boy, there's a salvo right off the top. No, I actually, yeah, I was unencumbered on my way to getting to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, other than having to wake up early after covering a game. I know it's not that early, but when I cover a game, I'm always fired up, and then I can't go to bed early. So, usually I sleep in on those days, but to be here with you guys, I force myself out of bed.
We appreciate that. That's the loyalty that you show to us, and we appreciate that very much, Mr. Wyman. Good to see you, as I mentioned. Obviously, Ted, we brought you on to talk about the Jets.
Drew, is there any, hold on, before you get going with Teddy, is there any truth to this? Rob is saying it's your birthday today, Ted. Is that true?
Well, Rob is a very astute fellow, yes.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Ted.
Thanks,
39 again, right, buddy?
You got it. I'm very much enjoying that age.
Yes, I've been having that age for the last couple of years as well, and it's a perfectly fine age to stay.
What matters most is that Ted looks better than all three of us put together.
So. No question about it. No, look at that bright. Even on sleep deprivation, Ted, he looks better than the three of us. Teddy obviously brought you on. Talk about the Jets. Maybe we'll throw in a Bomber question or two. More than my snark off the top, at least. From your perspective, it sits here. It's June 11th. The NHL draft is less than a month away. Free agency is about a month away. When do the Jets need to have a head coach by? If you were circling a date on the calendar, what red mark are you putting it on next to?
Well, I would have put it already.
Okay.
It would be a date that was before now for sure. That's what I would have expected. But obviously, it's not. It hasn't happened, so it doesn't have to have happened yet. But it's got to be pretty soon. You're coming into the draft. You got to get your assistants in place. The weird thing is, guys, it's going on all around the league. Like, all these teams have vacancies. We know who they all are. We know who all the candidates are, and yet nobody has made the move yet. So really interesting. It's a pretty interesting situation. At one time the Jets were front runners for whoever they wanted because there weren't a whole lot of other teams that needed coaches. But now you're still talking Vegas, Dallas, Philly, Detroit, Boston. I mean, that's a big number of teams and a lot of desirable teams where a coach could, go in and obviously have great success and in a big market and good hockey markets. So, it's a really interesting dynamic, this whole situation with the coaches. And I guess we all just throw names in a hat and see who goes where? I don't know. Maybe that might be the easiest.
Ted, before you came on, we were talking about Jim Montgomery and you just mentioned Boston, Bruce Cassidy. And I was kind of arguing or disagreeing with Dave and Drew. And, I have to preface that by saying that I really don't think there is a clear cut, number two after Barry Trotz. Maybe you disagree, but it seems to me that there's probably, half a dozen guys that could possibly be the Jets' next head coach after Barry Trotz, right? But how surprised were you, first of all, that Boston fired Bruce Cassidy? Your colleague, Michael Tracos, good friend of the show, I mean, he basically, put it out there that, that they may have fired him because he was too successful, right? Getting the Bruins into the playoffs 6 years in a row. We know that the Bruins could be rebuilding, especially if Patrice Bergeron decides to retire and not be a member of the Bruins, right? So what do you think of Bruce Cassidy as a fit with the Jets? And what do you think of Jim Montgomery as a fit with the Jets?
Well, my expertise on an Eastern Conference team like Boston isn't that great, I got to admit. But, from what I saw, Cassidy had something really good going on there in Boston. And when he was fired, it was, it was shock and awe all around the hockey world. It seemed like everyone looked at him as being highly respected and successful. And I mean, it's not that dissimilar to the Trotz situation. I think there was a lot of shock when Trotz was let go by the Islanders after a tough year that involved a lot of COVID issues and injuries and things like that. And, there's a reason why guys like that get hired. They have such great success. They have great track records. But every coach gets fired. It's obvious that happens. And sometimes, as Paul Maurice said when he fired himself basically from the Winnipeg Jets, sometimes the players just need a different voice. It didn't really work here in Winnipeg. I mean, Dave Lowry did his best, but that different voice didn't really work. They need something really different. And clearly other teams see it the same way. The New York Islanders had one of the best coaches available, and everyone covets Barry Trotz. And the Boston Bruins had Cassidy, who was obviously very successful there. So it's interesting how these moves happen. the name you mentioned as well is Jim Montgomery. He's been out of it for a little while, out of the head coaching ranks, but he was pretty successful before some things happened there with the Dallas Stars.
Teddy, you talked about people want different things. We haven't had a chance to talk to you since your You Be the Boss came out with the comprehensive poll that the Winnipeg Sun runs. And, it came out a few weeks ago, but we haven't had a chance to talk to you about it. So what came with when you read that, when you saw the results, was there anything that really jumped out at you from what fans in this market are reacting to about the Jets?
Well, you'd be shocked to find out that they want Barry Trotz as head coach. Nobody expected that. I mean, it's interesting because when you see the results of how all in fans are on the Jets getting Barry Trotz, it just makes you wonder, is there anyone they can bring in here other than Trotz that's not going to put the fan base off? I mean, it's a bizarre situation when you think about that. I mean, there's obviously other good coaches. It doesn't have to be him. And, he's taken his sweet time deciding what he's going to do. And there's other teams that have money to offer, other situations. So it was never a slam dunk in my mind. Just because the Jets wanted him, it doesn't mean anything. And just because the fans want him, it doesn't mean anything. But how much disappointment is there going to be if it is someone else? That's the thing that you can't help but wonder. And there seems to be, certainly with fans on Twitter, and that's not the be all and end all of the situation, but there seems to be a lot of disdain for the idea of anyone with connections to True North, to Mark Chipman and the group here that own the Winnipeg Jets. And I think that's a little bit nearsighted too, because, if it's the right guy, it's the right guy. And, I've even seen people who and I don't even know that Randy Carlyle is a candidate. I don't think he is, but the fans even are sort of, well, no, you can't hire Carlyle because he's got connections to the Manitoba Moose and whatnot. That makes no sense to me. The guy won a Stanley Cup. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be the coach here, but I think people need to stop worrying too much about that kind of angle, that there's some friends and family discount to get a cheap coach in here. That's not how it's going to work.
To that point, Ted, and Ted Wyman is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Ted, of course, is the sports editor for the Winnipeg Sun, covers for Post Media as well. I think people are worried that the organization becomes too insular in that scenario. And I understand your perspective that, there's still some very good candidates who have direct and close ties to True North, and you shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. But I think that from the perspective, and again, we shouldn't listen to the Twitterati as for necessarily a nuance and perspective very often, but I think there is some concern that the organization becomes too insular if you have to hire somebody who's got those close ties to True North. That's why I think Jim Montgomery, his name, coming up recently is sort of appealing in that he's got ties to True North the 1 year he spent as a player for the Manitoba Moose. But at the same time, he's not sort of linked that closely with them like guys like Alain Vigneault, Randy Carlyle, Scott Arniel, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I can understand that sentiment from people. I mean, I do understand it, that they would like to see something really different. Like just go out and get somebody that's never been a part of this organization before, that comes in with a brand new voice. I mean, Paul Maurice said that's what they needed, and it is what they need. They need a real different look, a real change, a culture change, maybe somebody that's going to shuffle things up with, the leadership group. It's all things that were evident this year, that there was a stagnancy about the Winnipeg Jets in 2021-22. And somebody has to come in here and revitalize it, get the water flowing again. And I think that there's lots of names out there that could be, but I think that's why people have that sort of attitude, that they'd like to see it be somebody completely new and different and not somebody that has those ties. And obviously Barry Trotz would be a terrific hire here, but people have to be prepared for the possibility that it's going to be somebody else.
Teddy, just moving away from the coaching search for a second, it's been pretty quiet on the Pierre-Luc Dubois front. And you mentioned, Jets being stagnant this year. He definitely was not stagnant, setting a career high in goals and then continuing that at the World Hockey Championship. And I think you would agree, nobody expects Dubois to sign anytime soon. It might not be until late August, early September. But are you leaning towards a shorter term deal? I mean, there always is the dreaded arbitration 1-year deal, right? But are you leaning towards that, or are you still optimistic or realistic that the Jets could sign him to an 8-year deal or 7-year deal or whatever?
Yeah, optimistic about that. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, if you're leaning towards the short term, you're looking at a pretty bad scenario overall for the Jets. It ends up with Pierre-Luc Dubois playing for someone like the New York Rangers in the semifinals in a couple of years, right? On a rental, because that's exactly how it went with Andrew Kopp, who's an excellent hockey player and showing it repeatedly with the New York Rangers. The Jets got good return there, but that's not what you want. Basically, for having the second overall draft pick in 2016, getting Patrick Laine, eventually trading him for Pierre-Luc Dubois. If that guy walks away in free agency or has to be traded away because he went that arbitration route, that is a big failure for the Winnipeg Jets organization. So I don't think that you want to see that at all. And the way that Pierre-Luc Dubois played this season, he was a leader. He was physical. He had great skill around the net. He meshed really well with Kyle Connor, who was one of the best players in the league. I don't see why you would not be moving everything you can around to make sure that there's a way to keep him long term.
Teddy, after the season ended, there was a big, the hullabaloo, Mark Scheifele's comments, Kevin Cheveldayoff's comments, and what his status was going to be. Then you see things calm down. I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff gave the expected answer at the draft combine, about Mark Scheifele, and then people ran with that headline as if it was like he was written in stone. But I mean, he had no other option but to give really that answer. But it is interesting, right? Like guys like Frank Saravalli are doing their trade bait boards or whatever, and Scheifele is 25th. He is way down. So do you think this is one of those situations where, there's a lot of heat on this season. There was a lot of disappointment. Nobody was really happy. There's been a little bit of time, a little bit of space. Do you think this is a situation where it's going to cool off a little bit, and the teams, especially if you get a head coach that Mark Scheifele would be in theory happy with, do you think it's one of those situations where you could very easily see number 55 wearing a Winnipeg Jets jersey next season?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I've been saying this all along. You're not doing anything on that front until you got a head coach in here who gets a chance to speak to him and decide for himself whether he thinks he can coach Mark Scheifele, whether he thinks he can get him to play defense, whether he can bring him back to the player that he was, and not that long ago. I mean, in 2018, guys, in May of 2018, was there a better player in the NHL playoffs than Mark Scheifele? I mean, he was unbelievable. He was clutch. He was doing everything right. He scored all the big goals for the Jets, and they made it deep into the playoffs. So that guy's not that far gone. But that's part of the stagnancy that's happened here, is you can tell, and it's happened with other guys too, you can tell he's not having any fun. And when someone's not having any fun, they don't perform as well. And maybe when they have a tendency to not be a great defensive player, well, maybe that shows through more when you're not having fun. And I think maybe there's something out there. You can make a trade. It wouldn't be the worst thing because, as we said, the whole organization does need a shakeup. But there's got to be a great return for a player like that. The potential for Mark Scheifele is still extremely high. He's not an old player. And I don't think, as some do, that he's overrated, because I've seen him at his best. That's not overrated. That's outstanding. So again, I think you got to get a coach in place for that. I think ideally, maybe you're right about Dubois waiting until the last minute to sign, because that's how it often works with guys that are in this particular situation. But do you make a decision from his camp if there's no coach in place yet either? I mean, I don't think you do. You want to wait and see. It's really quite amazing how many things are tied up in all these coaches in all these markets that haven't taken spots yet. And when that all starts to shake out, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more movement. But again, like you guys said, the draft's a month away, and it's time to get busy for a lot of these teams.
Absolutely. Ted Wyman, our guest Saturday morning. We're live on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and like I said, Ted Wyman joining us talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Reminder, in about 30 minutes time, Jets defenseman Nate Schmidt is going to join us on the program. Ted, we talk a lot about the head coach. is it fair for any new head coach to come in with the sort of expectations that his arrival is immediately going to be a panacea for what ails this team that has ailed this team for the last number of years? I mean, you'd have to be the reincarnation of Scotty, or I guess he's not dead. You'd have to, be the combination of Scotty Bowman and John Cooper and name any other great head coach, Barry Trotz, to come in and just by your presence fixing what ails this team, I would say. It seems like there has to be subsequent moves in addition to a new head coach.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you guys for having Nate Schmidt on after me, because that would not be an act I would want to follow. And I'm looking forward to seeing that, because that man is very entertaining. Secondly, we don't know how that works, Drew. You never can tell. But what we have seen in the past is that groups have been turned around by a coaching change. And sometimes it happens in mid-season. Sometimes it happens at the end of the season. Calgary Flames are the absolute perfect example. That team was spinning its wheels, going absolutely nowhere. And they bring in Daryl Sutter. And not only does he get that team playing well, but he revitalizes careers. And there's another reason why I point to Scheifele being a potential turnaround, popular player again in Winnipeg in 6 months from now under a different coach. Because look what happened with Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, Johnny Gaudreau was not good for a couple of seasons. He didn't play well. He wasn't playing good defense. He was having, he wasn't scoring the way that he had been. Well, what did he do this year? And he was given a chance to flourish, and he did incredibly well. And I look at Vancouver, where Bruce Boudreau came in, turned that team around. It's happened. It happens a lot. It's just, and it's a reason why coaches get fired. Because you can make that kind of a difference, and you can make it quickly, or you can do it in the offseason like the Jets are doing now, and you can build into something new. But I mean, it certainly can't hurt, right? Like, Paul Maurice recognized that there was that stagnancy that I talked about, and he knew that he had to take himself out of the equation because it just wasn't going in the right direction. Somebody else can fix that. We've seen it before. And you have to believe that with the pieces that are in place, maybe we're overrating it. Maybe we're overrating how good the Jets are on paper. But everybody thought they were going to be a good, solid playoff team this last season, and they weren't. And coaching has to take a big portion of the blame for that. So a new coach comes in, same kind of group. Maybe they can do a lot better.
Seems like forever ago, Ted, but a lot of people were picking the Jets to win the Stanley Cup, let alone just be a playoff team. So you're absolutely right. I wanted to ask you about Paul Stastny's comments earlier this week. It didn't get a lot of headlines, but basically, unless it's Trotz Watch related these days, it doesn't seem like it gets as much headlines, at least for Jets fans, not necessarily in the media. But sounds like he's going to test free agency, and that was a little bit surprising to me, because he's coming off such a good year. He's such a versatile player, can play center, wing, can play on basically any one of your top three lines. What do you kind of make of that situation? I mean, and how do the Jets replace Stastny? I mean, there's a lot of good young players that are going to come to the Jets lineup next year, namely David Gustafson, Morgan Barron, Dylan Samberg. But were you surprised at all by Stastny's comments to Pierre LeBrun?
Well, Cole Perfetti too, right? Like, I mean, there at some point, the 35, 36-year-old does get allowed to move on. And then you do bring in the younger guys to fill those positions. And I mean, Gustafson's been waiting, right? And he's been patient, and his time is coming. And Cole Perfetti's time is coming, right? And Morgan Barron looked really good for both the Jets and the Moose down the stretch and in the AHL playoffs. So yeah, I'm not saying that it's a great idea to let Paul Stastny go. He could be a really good player for the Winnipeg Jets again, a very serviceable player, because you can put him just about anywhere and he gets the job done. And he seemed like a pretty big force in that locker room. But he's another guy that I questioned at times whether he was actually having fun, because there was there was a disconnect in that room last year. There's no doubt about it. So maybe he thinks it's, I don't blame him for looking around. And honestly, I don't know, as much as I think Paul Stastny's been a good member of the Winnipeg Jets and a helpful guy, I don't know that it would be a terrible thing for them to go a bit younger in some of those areas. At some point, you have to do it. You can't keep guys on the farm forever.
Well, Teddy, that's a perfect segue into my question, because I wanted to ask you about that idea, because they have a glut of guys who are specifically defensive prospects, because forwards, you're going to have some turnover on the roster for sure. You can fill those spots, like you said, with Barron, Perfetti, Gustafsson. But in terms of the defensemen, this defensive core is locked up for a few more years. So there isn't a ton of space. Obviously, trading away Nate Beaulieu to the Pittsburgh Penguins opened up a space. You can get a guy like Johnny Kovacevic in. The left side, though, right? Dylan Samberg, Ville Heinola, Declan Chisholm. These are guys who, unfortunately for them, are all waiver exempt. So the Jets aren't going to have any sort of gun to their head situation where they can't send them down, but they're playing really well, especially a guy like Heinola or a guy like Samberg, who probably are close to NHL ready as you're going to get as a prospect. So how do you see that playing out? I mean, the Jets could keep them on the farm, but do they? And if they don't, what kind of moves are they going to make to clear up the space?
Well, the only choice, Dave, would be to trade Brendan Dillon and or Logan Stanley if you're going to open anything up for those guys. I mean, based on last year, Stanley would have to compete with those guys to be in the top 6 anyway. But I could see that being something that gets looked at on draft day. Brendan Dillon's been moved a few times with a pretty big contract that has some term left on it. I'm not anti Brendan Dillon. I think he's a good guy for the room, and I think he's the kind of defenseman that the Jets absolutely needed coming to last year. But if you're going to play Ville Heinola and Dylan Samberg, you got to find a way to get them onto the team, and that would make a lot of sense. Maybe some help for somewhere else up front if you can make a move like that. But with Dylan, it's probably a draft pick kind of situation, as it has been in the past, just because of the way his contract is. Stanley would be an interesting one. He did play so well in his first season and in the playoffs. Didn't really play all that great last year. You wonder what other teams look at, though, because he's 6'12" or whatever he is, and he plays with a tough streak, right? That's one thing that the Jets don't have a ton of, and Logan Stanley can do that. He doesn't seem like he's afraid of anybody. He's also got a good shot. There's a lot of potential there with him, but I don't think he really showed it all that well here in his second season. So it would be interesting to see where it goes from there. Is he tracking towards being a top 4 guy? Not sure at this point. And so what would other teams pay for it? It's an interesting thing to look at. And I'm guessing that the Jets will, because as you said, with that many defensemen coming up and all getting really close to NHL ready, you're going to have to find some room for them at some point.
Teddy, we'll let you go on this last question. We haven't had a chance to speak with you in a while. And since then, Kevin Cheveldayoff got a contract extension at the end of the regular season, and that surprised a lot of people, given how big of a tire fire the Jets' regular season was and how disappointing the year was. Are you surprised that he got that contract extension? And then sort of as a second fold, if this year was so poor, and it was for the Jets, and he yet was rewarded with another 3-year term, does he sort of almost have a general manager for life role here in Winnipeg? I say that a little tongue in cheek, but it just seems like he continues to get rewarded, even though the results haven't been commensurate with the length of time he's been here in Winnipeg.
Well, it's a tough one, Drew, because as you have pointed out before, the Jets had a good looking roster coming into the NHL season. Many people, and these were not just Winnipeggers, there's no accusing anybody of being a homer. Many people picked them to be a deep playoff team. Some picked them to win the Stanley Cup based on the fact that they had 2 excellent lines. They had one of the best goalies in the league. They had a strong third line anchored by Adam Lowry, and they added Schmidt and Dillon and became a much stronger defense. They looked at what they were like the year before, and they weren't quite good enough, and they addressed those areas. Who did that? Kevin Cheveldayoff. He did the job everyone expected him to do. He gave the coaching staff the tools to be a better team. The coaching staff are the ones that didn't get it done. And 2 guys, well, lots of guys paid the price. The whole coaching staff is gone. Paul Maurice earlier than the others, but they're all gone. So, do you look at Cheveldayoff and say, that's on him. Maybe these players aren't as good as everyone thought. I guess you could make that argument. But, I mean, if you give the tools to the coaching staff and they don't get it done, I don't know how you really blame the GM. Now, on the flip side, would I say that it would be a terrible thing for the Jets to do something different at the GM position? No, it wouldn't. It'd be the same as what we're talking about with everything else in the organization. It would be new blood. It would be a completely different philosophy and a different look at what would make this team work. But I'm not going to say that Cheveldayoff doesn't deserve a chance to keep it going because, it's been pretty good. There's no doubt about it. They built into a playoff team, a strong playoff team, a contender. They've fallen back, yeah, but are they that far back? I'm not sure they are. You give it a chance. If they can land a pretty, really great coach, let's just say they happen to hire Barry Trotz, and they're a really good team next year. Is anyone going to be complaining about Kevin Cheveldayoff's work? I don't think so.
Ted Wyman is the sports editor for the Winnipeg Sun. He's with Post Media as well. He's a good friend of the program.
He's also the birthday boy, Ted. What's going on tonight?
He's also the birthday boy. Happy birthday. Where's the party? What time should we be there? Party favors, loot bags, the whole 9 yards?
I think it starts at 1, maybe a little bit of, speed racing or something like that. I'll find something fun to do.
There you go. Teddy, enjoy it. Thanks so much for waking up bright and early with us this morning. Have a great birthday, and we'll do it again real soon.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure. Have a great day.
There he goes, Ted Wyman joining us here on the program. Let's head to break. When we come back, more Jets talk. Nate Schmidt in about 15 or so minutes time. Don't go anywhere. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think Illegal Curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the Illegal Curve Sandwich.
The Illegal Curve Sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. We're live on YouTube. Drew Mindell, that's me. Dave Minuk in the top right. Ezra Ginsburg in the bottom middle. You guys have big weekend plans? You know, Dave, this is the question of the week. Where are you heading tomorrow? Weather's not looking so good. Is that going to impact the plans for your travel Manitoba sort of thing? Where are you heading tomorrow? What's the game plan in store? Where can the people of Manitoba expect to find Dave Minuk on his Sunday jaunt?
Well, I don't know that it's the weather that's going to preclude me. I think it's the $2.07 gas prices right now that might be preventing me from traveling out and about. I think I have baseball tomorrow, so I'm not 100% sure if I do. There may be an afternoon doubleheader, but regardless, I will try and get out at minimum to the Interlake. We'll see what we can do. Get up somewhere in the Winnipeg Beach, Gimli area, maybe Hecla. Who knows? But they'll probably somewhere up in the Interlake. The white shell, as I understand it, is slowly receding. It's slowly opening up. People are getting back to their cottages. So the white shell soon enough. Maybe I'll take Ezzy back to Pine Point Rapids for a good old hike. We had a good time there. We did Montgomery Falls as well as. Is
that what you're going to do? You're just going to throw him in?
Well, let's just say Big Daddy got himself in. He took his shirt off and he went in those rapids. So I suspect now though they're like a class 5 rapid with all the water we're getting right now. But normally,
and it was weird because I decided, it was a hot day, so I decided to go for a swim, and it was unfortunate because a bunch of kids ran away because they thought a bear was coming towards them. Right, so it was a lot of fun. But you mentioned the gas. Like, I filled up my car the other day. It was $85. I drive a Nissan Sentra. Like, it's not like
an SUV.
Like, I don't drive a Hummer or like an Escalade. I drive a little dinky Nissan Sentra, and it's $85. So it's ridiculous. I think we had somebody in the chat a couple weeks ago that said they filled up their F-150 for like $192 or something. Like, it's getting ridiculous.
Wasn't that Scott?
It is already ridiculous.
Yeah, never mind getting ridiculous. Yeah. It already is ridiculous.
Exactly. Well, it's also like $12 for a little thing of like raspberries. Like, everything is expensive. Like, I'm just getting excited. I'm just getting really excited to declare bankruptcy.
God, raspberries, no strawberries for Ginsburg. It's only raspberries.
Like them. What, your kids don't like raspberries? I get strawberries too.
They do. I'm just giving.
The only thing with raspberries is they get very squishy and they make a mess.
It's hard. It's a hardship you have to overcome.
That's why generally you put them in your mouth and you don't play with them in your hands.
But it's more fun to play with them in your hands, Dave. Don't you know that? In any event, Ted Wyman's appearance on the show brought to you by our friends at Betway, one of the most trusted voices in sports betting, both in Canada and all around the world. Betway is the sports betting app that puts you, the customer, at the forefront. With a large selection of betting options in sports, as well as strong promotions and fair odds, what are you waiting for? Head on over to Betway and bet your way. Must be 19 years or older to play. Please play responsibly. We're so focused on the coaching search, and understandably, because that, a team without a coaching search, what is a team without a coach? If not a team in need of a coach, there's some other factors for this Winnipeg Jets team that really haven't been discussed at all. And I'm talking about some of the RFAs, and I'm not talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, because everyone expects that's going to take some time, and that's not going to be the low-hanging fruit that the Jets are going to take care of first. But there's guys who are RFAs, who are arbitration-eligible RFAs on this Jets roster, namely Mason Appleton, Jansen Harkins, Evgeny Svechnikov. You got a UFA situation in goal, and that you don't have a backup goaltender right now. Eric Comrie is an unrestricted free agent come July when his contract expires. Are you sort of surprised that Kevin Cheveldayoff hasn't done anything with any of those quote-unquote maybe easier contracts at this point in time, that the Jets really, with the exception of signing that European goaltender Oskari Salminen, really haven't had any player movement whatsoever since the season ended?
I really hope Salmonen's nickname is Salami, by the way.
I would think it would be Salmon.
Yeah, it could be Salmon too.
Yeah, I would think it would be
Salmon or Salami. I think he's got a few options there, right?
Is salami a thing in Finland, though?
Yeah, I think it's a thing. Isn't salami a thing everywhere?
Oh, and it's a thing in Italy, certainly. I'm not sure about in Finland.
Well, there's German salami. Like, there's, I don't know.
Hungarian salami. I have never
Hungarian
heard of
salami.
If there's anybody from Finland in the chat, if you can tell us if salami is a thing, that would be appreciative. And anyways, go on.
Don't you like Genoa salami, Drew? Aren't you a Genoa guy?
Yeah, but Genoa is, it's a city in Italy.
Yeah, you've been to Italy.
I have been to Italy.
I haven't been to Europe. One day.
I've been to Italy.
Yeah. Dave's a world traveler. Where in the world is Dave Minuk? Go on.
I like to stick to River Heights. And I'm there today.
The gas prices and all.
Yeah, exactly. Don't have to spend any money to walk from wherever I live to other streets. I'm not going to say where I live because I don't want a flock of people, the IC universe heading to my house. But let's just say I live in Central River Heights, so you can find me close to the 7-Eleven on Corden. Let's talk about what are we talking about again? I lost my train of thought there.
RFAs.
Oh yeah, RFAs. Okay, yeah. See, you get me talking about salami, Drew, and I completely forget. We've talked about Eric Comrie. We had him on the show. I mean, we all agree Comrie should be given at least a couple of years, maybe even a 3-year deal. It's unfortunate. I still don't really understand, what happened there with the UFA, RFA status, but we'll just leave that. We're focusing on, as you mentioned, Jansen Harkins, Mason Appleton, Evgeny Svechnikov. Let's start with, I guess, Mason Appleton. Brought over at the trade deadline, filled a role. I just don't know what the upside is with Appleton. I think, Appleton is a guy, what was he, a 5th round pick, Dave? Back in what was it, 2013? 6th round pick in 2000, maybe it was 2015, 15. I forget. 15. So, I mean, Appleton is a guy that, to me, his upside or the ceiling is like a 3rd line guy, but I think he's probably better suited for a 4th line. And I say that because he just doesn't provide a lot of offense. Right? Like Appleton isn't a guy that you're going to get 20 goals from, right? So like if you're bringing him back, it's most likely going to be as a 4th line winger. Appleton, I'd say is 50-50 coming back. He has deep ties, with the Moose and the Jets, so I could see him coming back. Now, when you're talking about Evgeny Svechnikov, I think, towards the end of the season, I would argue that he was misused, right? Like Svechnikov is a guy, I think that's underrated in terms of what he does aside from goals and assists. Like this is a really skilled player. Everybody knows he was a 1st round pick of the Red Wings, but this is a guy that plays physically. He hunts down pucks. He's a good defensive player. I would bring Svechnikov back on a 1 or 2 year deal. And I don't think you're going to have to pay him a ton of money, right? Like you're talking about all guys that are kind of around like $1 million to $1.5 million. I would say, right? Like, I mean, that's a little bit of a, general range, but I mean, none of these guys I think are going to cost you, $2 to $3 million. When it comes to Jansen Harkins, I think you have to think about like who's coming into the lineup up from the Manitoba Moose, and what is a guy like Jansen Harkins' role going to be next year? Like Stastny, it looks like is going to test the UFA waters, but I don't think anybody thinks Jansen Harkins is a strong candidate for a top 6 role. So if you have a guy like Morgan Barron who could either be a 3rd line guy or a 4th line guy, plus you have David Gustafsson coming into the fold, like I wonder. Like, is Jansen Harkins maybe a guy that, you move and there's opportunities for him elsewhere? Like, of these 3 guys, Harkins, Svechnikov, and Appleton, I would probably, again, if I was the GM, I would probably put Svechnikov at the top of that list. And then I put Harkins 2nd and Appleton 3rd. I just think, what you're going to get in Appleton? He's an NHL player. I just think there's other people that have passed him on the depth chart.
Interesting. Good perspective there, Ezzy. I appreciate that. Dave, if you had to rank them in priority, like Ezzy was just talking about there, or what do you think about those 3 RFA forwards, Appleton, Harkins, and Svechnikov, in terms of how they fit in with the Jets' future moving forward? Because we know that the bulk of the Jets prospects that are close to NHL ready are on the defensive side of the ledger, not necessarily the forward group. Although Morgan Barron and his addition late last year certainly opened some eyes as a guy who might be able to crack the Jets roster moving forward.
Yeah, and his 4 goals in 4 playoff games for the Moose definitely had folks, paying attention because obviously playoff hockey is another animal. So he's definitely put himself on the map for the Winnipeg Jets for next season, Drew. No question about it. I mean, I like Mason Appleton. I mean, he is a guy who had 12 goals for the Jets, 2 seasons ago. It didn't go well for him in Seattle, and he had 2 in 19 for Winnipeg in his comeback. I would see if you pair him with Adam Lowry, they had good chemistry. I think he's a good fit. I think he is a 3rd line winger, and the Jets don't have a ton of depth on the wing, right? Guys like Gus and even Barron played center, so you couldn't move him to the wing. But I like Appleton. I actually think he brings a lot. Jansen Harkins, another player, I think he has a possibility. I think if you're the Winnipeg Jets, I think, first of all, there's no harm in bringing any of these guys back because it's not costing you anything. Like, as he said, it's $1 million, $1.5 million. So you can get all these guys signed to contract. You're going to sign. I think they're signing all 3 of these guys. I don't think it's a question because you need that competition. You need the guys to fight for 3rd line roles. You need guys to fight for 4th line roles. You don't want to give anybody on this team anything. And, sure, you're going to have Cole Perfetti in the lineup next year, and he may be the guy who pairs with, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor. But, Perfetti, as we talked about, could look really good with Mark Scheifele and Nikolai Ehlers. And then you have Perfetti, and then you have Dubois potentially with Svechnikov and Kyle Connor, and then Wheeler with Lowry and, Appleton. Wouldn't that be an interesting trio? That's a line that could be defensively responsible, but also produce some offense for you. And then that gives you an opportunity, guys like Gustafsson and Barron, and obviously you're still going to have Toninato. So to me, I think, you have to bring these guys back because I think you need to have competition. You don't want to just sign some scrub off another team who's going to be whatever. I mean, guys have shown flashes. I agree with Ezzy. Nobody has seized an opportunity, right? But generally speaking, especially with like Svechnikov, I mean, look how easily he was in the doghouse last year. I mean, it was crazy. And look, Paul Maurice wasn't wrong. If you're on the second line, you have to produce, because as a lot of people have jokingly said, you can put anybody on that second line with Kyle Connor and Pierre-Luc Dubois, and they're going to get points because those guys are so prolific. So you do have to be able to produce yourself. But as he's right, he did things. He dug for pucks. He went in the corners. He was aggressive in that regard. That's what they need. And so if a guy is going to seize that role, then let him seize that role. And that's what we'll see in training camp. So to me, all three of these guys are no-brainers to bring back because I think that there's a familiarity with Winnipeg. Guy like Mason Appleton, like I said, 12 goals 2 years ago. That's someone who I think can probably get you 10 to 15 goals again in a consistent role playing with, Adam Lowry or something like that. So I think all three of them are important pieces, are good pieces to bring back simply because of what you've seen with like a guy with Svechnikov, who I would think would feel responsibility organization, given the fact that, his career, which looked like it was on a downward trajectory, was somewhat reborn. Again, there was some turmoil, some turbulence, if you will, but the Jet eventually righted its ship and it was flying pretty consistently this season.
Ezzy, I look at the Jets roster, or the players that are currently on the Jets roster, be they RFAs or the pending UFAs or the guys who are under contract, and especially up front. I mean, I don't you see the Jets almost needing to dip into free agency? And I know it's easier said than done, especially with the salary cap situation being what it is. But I was reading Dom Lucian's article on The Athletic where he sort of went through his top 50 pending unrestricted free agents. Doesn't a guy like Mason Marchment out of Florida, a guy who's sort of come out of nowhere a little bit this past year and had a terrific year for the Panthers, he's going to get paid, mind you, but doesn't he just sort of fit perfectly for what the Jets are looking for in terms of a guy who's not necessarily flashy, but he's productive. He can play up and down the lineup. He goes to the quote unquote dirty areas. He's strong. He's big. He's aggressive. He's physical. All those things. Doesn't he just make so much sense for the Winnipeg Jets that I know it's not simple to get guys to come here, but you look at what a guy like Zach Hyman did when he went from Toronto to Edmonton and how well he's fit in there and how well he's complemented some of their high-end skill guys. The Jets need somebody like that, I think, to complement their high-end skill guys.
They need a little bit more sandpaper. And I know people hate to hear that. Sandpaper doesn't mean fighting. Sandpaper needs like an aggressive forechecker, a physical guy, an agitator. And then that's kind of the, Dave mentions, Appleton had 12 goals. Appleton's analytics are horrible. He doesn't have, he's a guy that can score, but he's a guy that oftentimes is kind of lost out there. And, same thing with, Jansen Harkins. Jansen Harkins, good player, rose up from the AHL, everything like that. But, you wonder, is he not good enough to be a third liner, but he's a fourth liner? But is that fourth line, is the identity of that fourth line a fit for him? So, yeah, I mean, I can definitely see the Jets going after a veteran. They need to find, to me, I know a lot of Jets fans or viewers are going to hate this, but find your Corey Perry, find your Pat Maroon, find a veteran guy that will mix it up and agitate. To me, the Jets have needed an identity on their fourth line for a long time now.
Well, they need an identity player. I mean, wherever that guy sort of plays in the lineup, they need that guy that is not accountable, because accountable is not the right word in this case, but they need a guy who can come in and just sort of, what you can rely on, what he's going to do wherever he plays on the roster. And I think that sort of kind of player it would be a real important addition to the Winnipeg Jets roster in the 2022-2023 season. But speaking of Winnipeg Jets players, a guy who's currently on the roster, a guy who's been a member of the Jets, our good friend Nate Schmidt joins us on the program. Nate, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things?
I'm doing great. Good morning, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Nate, can we call you a good friend? I don't know if we know you well enough to call you a good friend. I'd like to call you a good friend.
I would have worn my favorite shirt if it wasn't for you guys.
Oh, nice. I like that Orange Crush shirt. That's solid. How's the offseason going, Nate? We're going to get into it, but how are things? You're back from Europe. We'll talk about your World Hockey Championship experience, but now that you're sort of are you fully into off-season mode after your time overseas playing for Team USA?
Yeah, I had a blast. It was fun. Unfortunately, we were struck with a few injuries over there, which made it tough. We ended up only playing with 4 defensemen, I think, the last couple of games. So that was something. But it's been great. It's first week home and just up at the lake on a Saturday morning, enjoying the weather. I actually got back into the gym this week already just to try and get myself ready to rock for next year. Yeah, it's been a good start to the off season. We had I get married in a month, so I get a little
awesome
engagement ceremony with our family here, where my fiance and I kind of first met here at the bar at the lake here. So it was cool. Back to the roots. I did lose the engagement party game last night, so I'm a little bit sour this morning.
Well, we appreciate you waking up after the engagement party with us. Congratulations on your upcoming nuptials.
Yes, congratulations. Ask Drew any questions. He's been married for 10 years, Nate, so he's got it all figured out.
Yeah. Ask my wife how she puts up with me. I think that's the better question.
We got plenty of advice last night. Trust me, I've been writing everything down.
That's very smart, very smart. I was going to ask you mentioned you got back into the gym. How long will you be off the ice for a while still? When will you get back on the ice and sort of get back into on ice training as opposed to just sort of the quote unquote dry land training?
Yeah. It's funny to say that. I feel like every year it gets pushed a little bit. Like when I first started, I was like, gotta be on the ice first week of June. Like I have to be on there. I gotta be ready to rock. That was like my first couple of years pro, and then probably third year pro, I was like, okay, I'll wait till the 4th of July. Now I'm in like the second week of July, because I realized that the biggest thing is like your hips relax and kind of let those muscles that you use all year long get a break, right? Because skating isn't a natural movement, and so you can do a lot of things in the gym that help stabilize all the other things in your hips that you don't use during the year. And so it's been an important part for me. I'm actually going to be on the ice. Oddly enough, next week I coach a camp. A couple 15-year-old kid, for the 15s, select 15s in Minnesota. I've been doing it for 10 years, which is wild to say that already. So I'm excited. Me and Austin Pagansky will be there. So it's an exciting time giving back, and it's fun. We have a great time too. It's coaching though. I don't envy that job. You don't envy that job.
We'll talk about coach. We'll talk about coaching in a little while. Your team obviously is still in need of one, and that's obviously been a topic of the offseason. Hopefully, you'll humble some of those 15-year-old kids, put those teenagers in their place for a little while.
Oh God, they always got something, right? It's a lot of the kids are really receptive and quiet, but you get one or two that are pretty rambunctious and think that they got all figured out. I was like, man, listen, I don't have it all figured out. Trust me. So I don't know if you can already too.
Yeah, Nate, I wasn't going to be the one to ask you about a coach. We'll just wait until Chevy makes that decision. But just going back to the World Championship, and obviously we'll get back to the Jets in the offseason and everything like that. But for those who maybe aren't as familiar, because I think you'd agree in North America, when we talk about international hockey, it's all Olympics, World Juniors. When the World Cup of Hockey is going on. But for those who don't know, like, just how big is it in Europe, right? Like, I think and some of us know, because it is huge. And also as a kind of second part of that question, why is it so important? In addition to, the obvious one is like wearing the American flag on your jersey, and for Pierre-Luc Dubois and Adam Lowry wearing the maple leaf and all the other, players who represent their countries. Obviously, that's a huge part of it. I think always like to represent your country. You're a proud American, right? But what else can that do? Because it seems like, you look at, PLD, like he had such a strong tournament. Isn't there that aspect of, continuing your season, because obviously the Jets didn't make the playoffs, and hoping that will help you continue that into next season with a good performance?
Yeah. I think it's to go back about talking about the World Championships over there. It's insane, by the way. It is something unlike you have to experience them, especially in Finland. So Finland had, we played in Tampere. It was a brand new rink. And even when we would play Great Britain or Latvia or whoever it would be, that's not Finland or Sweden, that's close by, people from Sweden would just show up and watch the game just as fans of hockey. I always thought that was super cool. I applauded their fans for doing that, because I was like, obviously it wasn't the sold out barn when we played Finland, which was pretty incredible. It's such a different feel, it's early in the morning for us back in North America. You don't really realize how big it gets until you get into the medal round, and the games are crazy. It was awesome. It was a great experience. And like I said, unfortunately, I think we ran out of gas a little bit on the back end with one of those guys rampant. I think Seth Jones might have played 600 minutes or something like that. It was something absurd. I played against a guy, you don't realize how big of a stallion he is until you play with him. And so it was pretty cool. But I just think, for me, after the year was over, with a sour taste in your mouth about how it ends, you watch teams in the playoffs, like that's only happened to me once in my career where I haven't been able to get in, and it's hard. So when they called, and I said, it sounds like something I want to do. I felt like I had my game pretty good for most parts of the year, but there were times where I didn't. And when I left the year, I felt I had more to give, and I didn't like that feeling, right? Because you feel like you have more to give with games and playoffs. And so this is a good way to remedy that, right? That I went over there. I loved the game's different, right? The where the plays are different, the ice size, the reffing, all that stuff is different. It's an adjustment period. It definitely took our guys a few games to get used to how the game is played over there. With the 2-3 guys sitting in the neutral zone, there's not really a lot of forechecks. It's just one team waiting for the other one to turn it over, and that's about it. And power plays. That's about all. That's about all it comes down to. But yeah, I had a blast over there. We had a great group, and that's what makes it fun, right? When you have a good group that's over there, we had a lot of young players that were just eager to learn, and it was fun to kind of be able to create a culture with our guys and kind of be the older. It was scary because I was the oldest guy, and I couldn't believe the guys. Some of the guys would call me dad, and I was like, stop, stop, please.
Nate Schmidt is our guest Saturday morning.
And I actually still keep in contact with those guys.
Nate Schmidt is our guest Saturday morning. We're live on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show talking about Nate's experience. Can you hear us, Nate? Yeah, you're good. Okay.
Yep.
There you go. Go ahead, Dave.
Nate, one of the things you and I talked about last summer was the idea of mentoring, and how I remember you telling me stories about how guys, when you were, early in your career, mentored you, and you just listened to them, you kind of soaked it up, and they were real helpful for your career. And it seems like you're paying that forward, because, when I did the Moose end of season media availabilities, one of the things that guys like Ville Heinola, Dylan Sandberg, they talked about how you specifically, you and Brendan Dillon, but you were mentioned, how you guys created that environment for them. Is that something you're consciously thinking about when you see these young guys? Because, obviously there's always that competition, right? Young guys want to come up. They want to take that spot away from a vet. But at the same time, you created an environment for these guys that felt welcoming to them. And that's something, when they came back down to the AHL and I talked to them, that was something that they all kind of mentioned, to me at least.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. I remember, we talked about it last summer. It's an invaluable tool to your group, and you have young players. You have to have young players come in. You look how the contracts are structured nowadays, you have to have guys that come in when they're young and be able to play and contribute to your team early. And if they don't feel comfortable in the game, and they don't feel comfortable in their own, like within our team and in their own game, it's not going to help us win. And so, it's a part of the game that I think you have to see as the game within the game, right? The locker room game is an important part of the group. I think if your locker room runs things it makes an incredibly easier job on your coaching staff, on everybody, right? And I think for me, and like Billy's a great kid, and Sammy, like I think Dylan Sammer's going to work out with me this summer. Just because it's fun to see when guys start to really come in their own. And I thought these guys both, as the year went on, like you saw Billy at the beginning of the year, and then you saw him at the end of the year, that there's a big transformation in his game. Dylan Sammer, the same thing. You see him, and I thought at the end of the year he was a guy that had so much confidence in his game and really fit in with our group. I thought he played incredibly well down the stretch for us. And that's what you need. You need these guys to be able to come in and play for you next year, and you have to have them. And if they feel comfortable in that situation, they're going to thrive. If they come in and they're tight and they're nervous and, maybe they're not feeling that type of, community, then it makes it for such a harder situation. And I just remember that when I was a player, so I try as hard as I can to help bridge that gap.
Nate Schmidt is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about his off-season plans, talking about his experience with the World Hockey Championships. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, but that was your first time wearing the Team USA logo. What did that mean to you, as a player? You've obviously, you've come up sort of the hard way, undrafted. You've had to really fight every step of the way to become an NHL regular. What did it mean to put on that Team USA logo to you?
Yeah, the first time kind of gave me some goosebumps. I still kind of get it a little bit, right? It's playing the NHL is something. It's such a special accomplishment and a time in your life to be able to do that. Every time you do it, it's awesome. But putting on your country's flag and go up, and like it was fun. When the first game we played against Canada, I'm looking across at Doobie and Laos. I'm like, this is kind of weird. But
give him an extra little poke, maybe a little cross check.
No, don't. Hey, when it comes to Laos, don't poke the bear. I told him, I was like, hey man, if you don't run me tonight, I'd be really happy with that. I'll make sure to get you a couple of short side hats, whatever you need, whatever you can do. He looks at me, he just rolls his eyes like, come on, man. And sure enough, first forecheck, I see him barreling down. He's yelling at me for like, Smitty, move it. That's the fun in it. But it was a special thing to be a part of. I mean, anyone that has the chance, I think you should do it. It's a long tournament, 7 preliminary games, right? It's long, but we had a lot of fun on our team. We did a lot of things together. I think, like I said, we had almost like a college atmosphere because how we were, so we kind of treated it as a college team. We all just kind of together everywhere, So what made it really.
Nate, you mentioned short side there, and obviously you're rocking the hat, and you were negotiating deals as you were over in Finland, the World Hockey Championships. I believe that was about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. USHL made the 3-year agreement, becoming the official off-ice accessory partner. For those who aren't familiar with short side, I was checking out the website yesterday, and I love the shirts. I was maybe hoping I could get some type of friend discount on one of those shirts. I'm just kidding, obviously. I'll pay full price, Nate. But love all.
Why not?
Love all the stuff. But obviously, I mean, your NHL career is your number one focus. But can you just talk about short side and how fun that's been to see that grow and get that deal with the United States Hockey League?
Yeah. I went to school for business, and I remember Dave and I were talking about this last summer. I went to school for this, and I was for the last couple of years looking for something. I think it's such an important part to have your mind be sharp in more than one way, and I find that with this, I get to meet so many more people and guys that you play with, and they have managers and people here, there, everywhere, and it's just such a small community, right? And I think it's been so fun to be a part of something that I can do every day. On the way up here, I was calling people. A couple of calls yesterday, just chatting people up, a couple of universities and such, and a couple of USHL teams just to say, hey, how's it going? And a lot of times you just sit and kind of shoot the shit, and talk hockey, talk, the community. And that's what makes it really fun. And I think that's why I've really enjoyed doing it. We're trending. We're crawling our way out of the infancy startup stage. We have made some bigger moves this year. It's such a big. I had my first time yesterday when I had a client say, "Hey, I would love to refer you to somebody," and I was like, "Man, that means so much to me." I was like, "That's the biggest compliment you can get, right?" It's like, "Hey, I'd love for you to work with a colleague of mine. I thought you guys have done a great job with us." So I said, "Wow, that's the best compliment you can get. I'm still working on my sales pitch. I know Dave and I talked about it last year. It still needs work. Still not great, but I'm grinding. I'm trying my best to get better at it every day. But it's a nice thing that when I leave the rink to keep yourself still sharp and not just going home and sit on the couch and just kind of vegging the rest of the day, So I find it to be really fun. It's a little tough, but we meet our guys meet every week. So fun. We chum it up for, put a couple of logs on the hot stove and get working.
Winnipeg Jets defenseman and business mogul Nate Schmidt is our guest on the Illegal Curve.
I want to see Nate on Shark Tank really soon.
Man, have you ever seen the Shark Tank guys? I was talking to me. Those things are like 4 hours long. I mean, obviously they cut them down for the show. Right. I think that's incredible. You understand, you look at a guy, he's like beating sweat and he's grabbing his head and he's like, he's going like this and the camera's not on. I don't realize until you're sitting in front of these absolute business savages for 4 hours. I'd be leaking too.
Nate, you spent 4 seasons essentially in whether it was North Dakota or in the USHL or University or Minnesota. So then you went to Washington and you were playing away from home. Now you're back within the vicinity of Minnesota again. Your first year in Winnipeg, not necessarily from a hockey perspective, and obviously COVID played a role. But was your family able to come up to Manitoba more? And was it nice having that closeness, that proximity to being close to home?
Yeah, it's been weird, right? I've been gone for so long that you forget what winter's like. And this winter really reminded us what winter was like.
Oh, it did.
Winter roared, Mother Nature roared her hind legs. And
it was those Colorado lows, Nate. It wasn't even our fault. It was Colorado, man.
You guys were in Florida. What are you complaining about? We were stuck here subbing.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? I was there all dang winter. But yeah, no. My family was able to come up a bunch. People were just get in the car and come on up, and come to games. That's something that's really cool. Have Allie's, my fiance's family. I get my family and brother and sister be able to come up. And I'm a big outdoorsy guy. I know when I talked about this last year, I was able to go hunting a bunch. I was able to, because I'm a big bow hunter and there's plenty of geese up there. So there's plenty of things for me to shoot. And and I'm always a big advocate. If you shoot something, you got to eat it. So I had plenty of goose and deer meat and stuff in the freezer. So I had a lot of fun in the outdoorsy aspect until it hit -35 for a month straight in January, February. Then I started to stay inside and hermit up a little bit. But no, it was really nice, Dave, to say my parents and family, can anyone just pop up easy peasy, just roll up 94 and a 29 right into Winnipeg.
Nate, what we're been focusing on here, what the fan base has been focusing on, of course, is the head coaching search and, the absence of a coach right now. When you've been talking to some of your teammates, when you've been chatting it up with guys, does that come up a lot? Is that something that, you focus on or you pay much attention to in the off season? Or is that something that sort of just gets done and then you deal with it whenever the new name is announced?
Yeah. I used to be a lot more like wanting to be involved and know what's happening. And you realize now it's one phone call and all of a sudden, bang, things could change, right? It's just like free agents in hockey. All of a sudden, you're talking to somebody, and then bang, someone comes out of nowhere. And all of a sudden you're like, wow. And all the reports said, hey, this guy was going to sign here. And all of a sudden he was here 30 minutes later, so it's hard to follow all the rumors, but there's a lot of teams looking for coaches. And there's a lot of head coaches, a lot of experience out there. It's going to be an interesting offseason. I find that there isn't really – every time you find, this guy's going to go here, there's about 4 other teams that are now linked to him. So I had a call with my agent last week going over the World Championships and, whether I was, told him I was healthy from coming back and whatnot. And I said, oh, you got news? He's like, buddy, I got no news. I got news every day. I don't even know what's news anymore. So
fake news.
Yeah, exactly. What is news anymore? But I just try to keep it even keel because you never know. I mean, it could be anyone at this point, right?
So Nate, obviously, I'm going to have to ask the question because Drew and Dave don't have the cojones that I have. No, but I'm joking. Obviously, we don't know who is going to be the next head coach. But if I'm not mistaken, Barry Trotz was your coach for 3 years with the Washington Capitals, and it's not a secret, that the Jets would love to hire him as a head coach. So just what was it like to play under him? Because there's no better person to ask than you, right? Playing for the Capitals. Just, what's he like as a head coach? Because I think you'd agree he's one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Yeah, and he was able to take that team. If he only would have held on me for one more year, I would have been able to win a championship. But I guess, hey, it is what it is. But
blame that on the You can blame that on the GM.
No, you know what? Wouldn't trade anything. I wouldn't trade it for what happened. I loved my time. Especially that first year in Vegas. But you know what? With Barry, he's very no nonsense when it comes to his structure, right? And I think it's something that Washington was a team that I thought needed that at the time. And when he came in and you saw how big of a transformation it did for our team, it was quite a transformation. You see, I mean, the Islanders have been a great team for the last ever since he's been there. Did they struggle this year? Yeah, but they also had the worst start, 15 games on the road, COVID. I mean, it's hard to come back from that, honestly. And then you got half your team out after this and half your team that's still recovering, and it's hard. It's hard, especially when you start the season in a hole. So I mean, is the success and the track record speaks for itself. Barry is on ice aside, off ice stuff. He's always a big family man, right? And so he always preaches that. He says, guys, like we take off days at home, we get family time. And I think that's an important part of the reason why guys respect that, especially as veteran guys, and be around your families and such when we just spend a lot of time on the road, right? And I think it's an important part of the game, right? If you don't have, if your house is a little bit messy, it's not going to be good when you walk into the rink, right? And so I think he realizes that more than anybody. And yeah, good Manitoba boy, right?
Yeah, there you
Absolutely.
go. Exactly right.
Nate, one of the things we want to talk to you about is the on ice. I mean, the Jets didn't have success, but you had a bounce back year for personally. So what was it like for you playing in Winnipeg on the ice and getting to know this group?
Yeah. I think I was happy with my year for the most part. Every time you walk away from the year, I always take a week to reflect back. Now it's been this last week, right? Because I was playing the last month, and there are times of the year I wish, you wish you were better, right? But there are times of the year I felt as a team we could have been better as a group. Like, sometimes guys will go through a really high time and maybe a low time, and I felt like as a group we would do that. And I think we need to do a better job of making sure that is maybe, if one guy or two guys go down, we don't kind of all go down with them and come back up. It's great when you're coming back up together, but as they over 82 games, right, you have to make sure that stays, stays up in that range. But I thought that the group was great. I think that we have some soul searching to do about how good we are. We're a good team. It was sad not seeing our team in the playoffs, and that's the God's honest truth. You got teams that are sitting there not playing and being like, we weren't that good this year. Yeah, we were pretty young, or this and that. And I don't think that we can sit back and say that. And I believe that our guys have to say after a long off season, I would be under the impression, and I have a little bit of a little fire brewing after what happened, watching these teams go. And I thought as the West has turned out, I thought the West was a little bit more of a wild card than people thought it was, because I think you had Colorado. I think two of the better teams were playing each other in the first round in LA in St. Louis and Minnesota. I thought there was an opportunity to be had there, and it's hard to say what would happen if we got in, but I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And I think our guys have to be okay with understanding that cannot be. We have to have a standard, and I think that's something that this summer is going to brew a lot in guys as they're working towards a long summer when August hits and they're realizing, wow, I've been sitting here for 2-3 months already.
Last question for you, Nate. It's sort of on that topic. That bitterness. Is that the fuel that drives you and should drive the rest of your teammates? Guys that you've spoken to this offseason, is that not even just lingering, but is that more your motivation and you're channeling that into this coming season? Because, it looks like the roster is, there's obviously going to be some movement, but a lot of the roster, a lot of the core looks like it very well could be the same next year. So is that sort of the fuel that drives you to have a better 22-23 season?
If you look at our team, and then when I sit in the room, you look at our group, you have the pieces, right? Now it comes to us as men to understand that we need to be better with each other. We need to be better about righting ships when they're wrong. And that's a maturity factor of a group. And I think that is going to be the most important thing as we move forward. And this summer is one of those things. And like I said, when you're sitting here and you turn the TV on, you're watching teams play, obviously only one team can be there at the end, right? Or two teams can be in there playing for the final at the end, and one team gets to hoist. But you got to give yourself a chance. And it's about being good all year round and just being consistent over the year. I think that's, like I said before, that was our biggest issue this year was we would play amazing, play great team, play really good teams and win games, and then play not so good teams. I mean, you look at how many overtime points that we let slip through and how many teams that were below us that they can't win every night. You're gonna lose to teams, but there are good losses and bad losses, I guess, if you look at the standings. You play a good team, sometimes the way it rolls out, that's just the way it is. But I think that's the biggest thing about us moving forward for this summer is saying, hey guys, this is gonna have to come within our group. It has to come from your group. I think the room runs how the team is the engine that makes things go.
Nate Schmidt is a defenseman for the Winnipeg Jets. Nate, appreciate your time. Congratulations again on your upcoming nuptials. Thanks for joining us the morning after your engagement party. We'll let you get back to your guests for cleaning up or whatever's on your plate for the rest of the week.
I just got done making breakfast, so I'm good. I don't have to clean up.
Okay, nice. I mean, we can be there in 6 hours. Whatever leftovers you need, we'll be there.
Hey, eggs, pancakes, venison brats, the whole 9 yards. Hey, I gotta use up all that.
I was gonna say, how do we get hooked up with some deer jerky, Nate?
Well, you gotta put me on a big one. That's all. If you got any land, anybody you see big old mossy horns walking around, let me know.
there was one in my front yard last night when I was coming home from the football game, but I don't think that's the one you wanted.
Listen to this. The last thing before I leave, I was leaving the hunting land one day, and I'm driving home, and I'm driving into, let's say, Cody Eakin's place. I was driving into his neighborhood, and a big 8-pointer, a 4x4, just stares me in the face like this as I'm turning into and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I was just sitting outside in the freezing cold for 3 hours, and here you are just standing in my driveway. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's hunting for you.
That's the deer getting their revenge on you, I think.
Yeah, that's just staring me down, being like,
yeah. That's somebody trash talking you on the ice. That's the equivalent of that.
Seriously. All right,
Nate,
gents.
Thank you for this.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it, guys.
Nate.
Have a great day.
See ya. Take care. Nate Schmidt joining us here on the program.
What a beauty.
What a beauty indeed. We'll take our final break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the interview, talk about our time with Nate Schmidt. He's always, like you said, Ezzy, what a beauty. Don't go anywhere. We're live Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey,
Hey, it's Aaron from Bernstein's Deli.
That's right, Ezzy. I'm the guy who makes all your sandwich dreams come true.
So when you think illegal curve, what comes to you?
How about juicy chicken schnitzel, grilled salami, fried onions, melted cheddar cheese, and honey mustard on toasted, thick-cut city rye bread?
Man, that's like the holy grail of sandwiches.
And so it shall be known as the illegal curve sandwich.
The illegal curve sandwich. Try it today at Bernstein's Deli. Find us at Corridon and Lanark or online at bernsteinsdeli.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years.
How about that? I double pressed the button.
Drew.
Sorry, some of us are off.
Fine.
Some of us are, yeah. The illegal curve kangaroo court is now in session.
Rumors has been a top sponsor for over 10 years, so I have no problem with playing a little more Rumors.
There you go. Good attitude there, Mr. Ginsburg. Big thank you to all of our sponsors. I'll give them their regular shout out in the next few minutes. We do highly encourage you to support all the good people who make this show a possibility. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button on this Saturday morning. You just saw Nate Schmidt talk to us for about 25 minutes. You have to be able to like that one. So smash that button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends, tell your family the best place to be every Saturday morning is, of course, the Illegal Curve YouTube channel.
Better than Hawaii, Drew?
Better than Hawaii. Better than Hawaii, no question.
Dave was in Hawaii recently, and he said it's pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, I like to think Illegal Curve is pretty good, but very good. But I don't know. I think I'd probably want to be in Hawaii.
Okay, fine. You can. You know what? The beauty of this format, Ezzy, is you can be in Hawaii and do the show at the same time.
The only problem with that, though, boys, is I need $10,000 to go to Hawaii. There's just I'm still trying to work out those financial issues.
Yeah, well, you know, you're at the point now where you're siphoning gas rather than filling up the Centra. So you got a long ways to go. But, you know, 1 penny at a time, though, although pennies don't even exist anymore. So, you know, maybe 1 nickel at a time. And you'll
another day, another dollar, right, Drew?
Yeah, exactly. You know, dollar bills, y'all. Nate Schmidt, great guest as always. So entertaining. So, he's obviously got all the energy he brings to the table. And we saw that, on display. Also, I thought his comments about the team itself and about the dressing room and about how that bitterness from last season needs to be channeled into this coming season was very apt and on point for where the Jets need to be as a franchise and where that dressing room needs to be to move forward.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, guys, he said that it was so nice to go over and play in the World Hockey Championship. Same thing goes for, Dubois and Lowry, right? But yeah, those were comments that were heartfelt. And I mean, you can see just, you listen to Nate Schmidt talk for just a few minutes even, and we talked to him for, 20 minutes or 25 minutes. You can see why he's always a favorite on, whichever team he plays on, right? Like Dave had a nice long conversation with him last year when he was traded to the Jets. And I mean, just imagine the right side without Schmidt right now, right? Like he has really made this team better. And I realize the Jets defense, there's a lot of work to be done and they have to be better defensively, but to have a guy like Schmidt with his pedigree, and he talked about it. It wasn't until he went to Vancouver that he missed the playoffs, right? Every single year he was in the NHL, with going back to Washington and then Vegas, obviously, he's been in the playoffs. So I think, he speaks for the entire team when, they want to make sure it doesn't happen again. And they want to make sure they get back into the playoffs. It was great to talk to him, great to talk about, he's getting married next month and, hunting and everything like that. He's just, he's an infectious personality.
Yeah, admittedly, the hunting thing is not something that I can relate to. But Dave M., you're a fisher, so you can probably relate to the fishing aspect of that.
Yeah, no, I definitely love to cast the line in every once in a while. So there's no question in that regard. And yeah, as he's right, he is a good interview. And I think, it's funny. Trini KP just said he looks at the calculations. You look at his contract, but you realize how important his attitude is for this group that really hasn't had a player of his personality since Dustin Byfuglien. They really haven't. And I've talked about it a lot. This group is very tight, very serious. And a guy like Nate Schmidt brings an energy and an attitude that is important. I mean, he knows when it's time to work. We talked about that last summer. And he goes, but, there's also a time that you have to be able to have some fun on the ice, in practice and enjoy what you're doing. And I think
it's a grind. The season is long and it's a grind.
That's right. And so, yeah, I mean, I think he is.
Are you talking about the Jets or us?
Both. Both. The only difference is that we're not athletes and they are, and we're just a bunch of schlubs on a computer or a television screen.
Yeah, because let me tell you, by the time it got to game 70, boys, I was feeling it a little bit this year.
Yeah.
Imagine how Dave and I felt. You were taking games off here, there, and everywhere. Minuk and I were driving this bus.
Drew, so much so that Drew's doing solo shows. I only did solo shows when Ezzy's internet dropped. But
never again. We don't want to see that wig come out from New Orleans or whatever that was, the mask.
No,
Drew, put it away. That still haunts me.
I don't have it handy, but if circumstances arise next season when the post-game shows start, and it's unlikely because we're usually all pretty good at being here, but if the circumstance was to arise, I already have ideas bubbling in this little brain of mine, in this cauldron of what the Drew Mindell experience could look like next season.
Nobody wants to see that. I mean, we had the wig last year, right, Dave, during the Jets-Oilers series, all the overtimes. Yeah. Last summer, and then this year it was the New Orleans Mardi Gras face mask. So I think I might have to come over to your house and burn that.
I mean, about the only prop we want to see on a post game show is me wearing the fire, or Ezzy potentially wearing the Fireball onesie. But that'll be something we discuss with our friends from Seagram's for next season. So we'll have to talk about that. But for right now, we're just focused on this season. Still lots to come. Even though the offseason has been a long one for the Winnipeg Jets, we've been on Trotz watch, Montgomery mania, whatever you want to call it, Drew, for the last little bit. It's dribs and drabs.
Cassidy craze.
There's lots of stuff going on right now. I mean, there's lots and there's little. I mean, the trade talk, that speculation really has died down. We've got all the latest on illegalcurve.com. And soon we're going to be turning our attention to the draft. I mean, the Jets have 2 first-round picks. They've got a lot of other picks in the other rounds, unlike in years past where the Jets have had, 3 picks or 4 picks. And you're like, well, will the Jets make a trade to acquire? Now the Jets have a lot of picks. They can restock the cupboard, bring some new players in. There's a lot of excitement with guys down on the farm. So, like you said, Drew, I think earlier in the show, there's the Young Stars tournament is back. That's always exciting. There will probably be a development camp, which we haven't had in a number of years. So I think there's a lot of things to be excited about, especially for June 10th. So for the next month and 2 weeks, because obviously free agency will start on the 13th. Then we'll have the development camp, or whatever you want to call it, for probably that week after the probably on the 14th, 15th, 16th. That week there'll probably be development camp for the young prospects and guys we haven't seen, like perhaps in Winnipeg. Chaz Lucius, get a chance to see him. Obviously, he didn't get up to come up, but he signed his ELC. There's other guys who are going to come up. So there's still a lot of things to look forward to over the next 6, 7, 8 weeks.
This certainly is. I mean, I want to sort of go back to what Nate Schmidt said about Barry Trotz, because Ezzy, that was a great question. They obviously have familiarity with each other.
Not the cojones part.
Well, that was okay. Going back to the familiarity about the two of them that they have together from their time in Washington. But, I think that's, and Nate mentioned it, how the emphasis that Barry Trotz puts on the family life aspect of being a professional athlete, where, you talk about it can't always be at the boiling point where, you're always at, 100% intensity at all time. You need to have that opportunity to sort of release. You need to go to your family. You need to be a husband. You need to be a dad. You need to be an uncle. You need to be a brother, whatever it might be. You need to have that opportunity where you just sort of escape from the pressure cooker of being an NHL player. And Barry Trotz, as a head coach, acknowledges that. And I'm sure that's, hugely important for a team, because truly, the Jets did not look like a team that was having fun last year. And they didn't look like a team that was enjoying themselves. And that, comes part and parcel with coming to the rink. And if you're losing more than you're winning, it's understandable. But you need to be able to sort of relieve that pressure. And I think Barry Trotz, as a head coach, totally understands that.
Yeah, and we've said it so many times. You mentioned, I mean, players in any sport hate losing, right? It does not matter what sport you're talking about, and especially professional athletes hate losing, right? So I think we talked about it earlier. Like Nate Schmidt, I mean, you could ask Kyle Connor this, you could ask Blake Wheeler this, you could ask Dominic Tananato, like anybody on the Jets last year, and they would tell you that at times they weren't having fun and they hated looking, outside of the playoff picture, right? And it was pretty clear, guys, with 10 to 15 games left, that there was a good chance the Jets weren't going to make the playoffs. And another thing I wanted to mention, guys, I thought it was really funny when Nate Schmidt was talking about how he was having conversations with his agent, and his agent was kind of giving him news, but it really wasn't news. So it just shows you that Jets players are kind of the same as us and Jets fans and everybody else, right? Like I think a lot of people are excited for the possibility of Barry Trotz being the head coach of the Jets, but if it doesn't happen, I think there's a lot of other good candidates out there. But right now, it's a quiet period.
I can't remember an offseason like this where it's just been, in terms of, coaching moves. I mean, there's always coaching moves. That's no different, but that nothing has been resolved, that, coaches have not been hired, that nobody has.
Well, I was going to say, Drew, but when you're talking about Trotz and Cassidy, those were back-to-back Jack Adams Trophy winners.
Yeah,
like these guys are not just mediocre coaches. Like we talked about it earlier. A lot of people know this, but I'll just say it again: 6 straight years with the Boston Bruins making the playoffs, and they were 1 win away from getting to the second round. So if they get to the second round, like I mean, how far away are they from going to the conference finals, right, guys? So like, yes, I mean the Bruins have great players like Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand, David Pasternak. We all know the names, Charlie McAvoy. But, I mean, this was a team that had a lot of turmoil in net, right? With Tuukka Rask coming back, then retiring. I mean, Jeremy Swayman is a really good young goaltender, but this Bruins team was not stacked like the team in 2011. So, I mean, Cassidy is a guy that I think, gets the most out of his players. Look at a guy like Jake DeBrusk, right? It seemed like Jake DeBrusk was going to be traded, and he turned it around, and Cassidy gave him that opportunity to play on the perfection line, right? So, I mean, Cassidy is a guy that's going to get scooped up quickly, whether that's Philly, whether that's Dallas, whether that's the Jets, Detroit. Yeah. But I agree with you. It's not just that there's coaches out there, really good coaches. Like Pete DeBoer is a really good coach. You can say that, he hasn't got his team to that next level. But, I mean, what could he have done with that biggest team with all of those injuries, right? Like, that was out of his control, right? Like, you had Stone out, you had Leonard out, Pacioretty. I mean, we all know that Eichel didn't come back until was it game 40 or game 50 of the season, whatever it was. So, I mean, Pete DeBoer is going to get snatched up as well. So, like, you're talking about big names when you talk about Trotz and Cassidy, DeBoer, even, a guy like Alain Vigneault. Claude Julien is still out there. Nobody's really talking about him, right? He almost led Canada to a gold. They got the silver. So, I agree. It's a very weird situation, and especially, Drew, considering that Barry Trotz is the first domino that has to fall. It seems like. It doesn't seem like, any team is hiring a coach until Barry Trotz makes his decision.
But all of these teams can't be, not every single team is, Detroit is not really thinking that they're a candidate for Barry Trotz. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I'm surprised like a team like the Red Wings and, Bruce Cassidy getting fired this week, it came out of left field. Nobody saw that coming because their season
including Bruce Cassidy.
Including Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah. But who was told by the team that his job was safe and he was coming back next year.
Well, if you had to choose...
By the way, remarkable press conference by him. I mean, that was a self-directed press conference where he wanted to be able to answer, kind of change the narrative that was out there. And so he initiated that media conference call with the Boston guys. And I don't know, I suspect other people joined in, but over 50 minutes of him kind of, speaking to the media and addressing things and taking control of the narrative, which I think from his perspective is a good thing.
Well, you know what? And if I had to choose between Bruce Cassidy as my coach or Don Sweeney as my general manager, it's a no-brainer that I'm choosing Bruce Cassidy.
You mean the guy who missed Kyle Connor?
Yeah, exactly. 3 times.
3 times?
3 times. Don Sweeney,
that was amateur scouting staff too. I mean,
no, I know.
Wow, but that's
what about the trade for Hampus Lindholm? I mean, the Hampus Lindholm and then signing him to that huge Hampus Lindholm's a good defenseman. They gave up a lot. What did they give up? A first rounder. I forget exactly what they gave up, but they gave a lot to give up Hampus Lindholm to get Hampus Lindholm.
If you were ranking coaches, Bruce Cassidy would be, towards the top of the ledger. And if you were ranking general managers, I don't think Don Sweeney would be towards the top of the ledger. So, I mean, pick your poison. I'm taking the guy who's better than the other guy. In this case, it's Cassidy over Don Sweeney.
Sorry, Drew, just was going to say a first rounder in 2022, second round picks in 2023 and 2024. Euro Vakanainen, who's a D prospect. I think he's around 22, and John Moore, right? So you gave up you don't have second round picks for the next 2 years after this year. Like that was a big price to pay to get Lindholm.
It certainly was. In any event, that's a Bruins podcast problem. This is a Jets podcast or a Jets YouTube show or whatever it might be. In case you missed any of it, Ted Wyman.
Drew, 1 second. Speaking of which, if Jets fans want to watch Tyrell Bauer, the 2026 rounder, he and the Seattle Thunderbirds are fighting for their playoff lives in the WHL championship game tonight in Edmonton against the Edmonton Oil Kings. So that's game 5 tonight. You can watch it on television.
Did you see the hit that Bauer leveled? They got him 5 in a game, I think, on the Edmonton Oil Kings player.
Yeah, I actually, some people call it predatory. I actually didn't think. Look, it's hard to see in the replay if he actually saw him.
Looked a little grainy.
I just couldn't really tell. Like from my perspective, he looked like he braced himself, but it just looked like an unfortunate collision. But some people suggested that he knew what he was doing. I mean, he doesn't look. We've talked about it a lot. He plays very mean. He'll be with the Moose, I suspect, next year. So that'll be an interesting prospect to watch, and you can watch him tonight on in the WHL Championship.
Well, and just one more thing on Seattle, guys. I'm not sure if you caught any of the game. I think it was last night. Kevin Kurchinski is draft eligible in 2022. He's a good Saskatchewan boy, left shot defenseman. Not sure if he's going to be an option for the Jets at 14, but he had, I think, 65 points in 67 games. He's another guy. If you have a chance to watch Seattle Edmonton tonight, Kurchinski is going to be a first round pick. Like I said, I don't know exactly where he's going to go, but he's a name that the Jets scouting staff could be looking at with that number 14 pick.
The Jets have 2 first-round picks, so of course, options aplenty for the hometown team. Want to say a big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make this show, who make the post-game show, who make the website a possibility. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, our friends at Betway, Bernstein's Deli. Remember, Bernstein's closing for some renovation, so if you want to get in there, you better do it this week because they're going to be closing to renovate the place for about, I think, 6 weeks.
Thursday, Drew, the 16th. That's the last day that Bernstein's is open, and then they'll be closed down for approximately 2 months.
There you go, exactly.
So you have time to buy probably, I don't know, 500 Illegal Curve sandwiches, something like that.
And I'm sure, and I think they freeze well as well, so you can definitely do that.
Just like Walt Disney, right, Drew?
Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, not touching that one, Ezzy. Seagram's, Rollies Transfer, and Grid Park support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve.
Did I take that too far? I tend to do that sometimes.
Yeah, I didn't expect you the cryogenic freezing. You could have also gone with Ted Williams' body. Remember Ted Williams?
400 hitter.
Yeah, he was also cryogenically frozen by his crazy family.
Are you going to be cryogenically frozen, Drew?
No, I'm going to be stuffed and put on the couch so the family gets to see me, like taxidermied. That's how I'm going to be, like Nate Schmidt.
Like Weekend at Bernie style.
Yeah, exactly. Get to like Nate Schmidt and all the deer that he was hunting during that interview.
I want to be shot out of a cannon, just like Hunter S. Thompson.
There you go. Well done there. Big thank you to Nate Schmidt for joining us. Big thank you to Ted Wyman. In case you missed any of those interviews, they're available upon an immediate replay on the YouTube channel, also available on podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends, tell your family, the best place to be every Saturday morning. And again, illegalcurve.com, your home for all your latest Winnipeg Jets news all season long. Big thanks to everybody for joining us. Big thanks to you all in the chat for joining us. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.